When the phone rang, my hand froze on the coffee cup. At 43, with my gray hair not yet reaching my temples, I never expected my mother to call at 6:30 in the morning. As Heinrich Müller, the successful regional manager of the Dresden Bank, I believed my life was under control. But when my mother's trembling voice rang out on the phone, I remembered how quickly everything could change. "Heinrich, my son," she said, her voice breaking, "I have something to tell you." Something very important. I pushed the papers on my desk aside and listened to my mother as I looked out the window at the streets of Berlin. "Your wife, Ingrid. There are things you don't know about her, her past, her connection to our family." My mother's voice trailed off as if the words were stuck in her throat. I stood up and walked towards the glass walls of my office. Below, the morning traffic flowed, people going about their daily routines. I, however, felt as if the foundations of my life were shaking. "What do you mean, Mom?" "What don't I know about Ingrid?" I heard my mother take a deep breath. "Son, she's not just your wife. She is also a part of our past. Your father Wilhelm, he has a history with her." The phone almost slipped from my hand. I grabbed my gray hair with my hands as if this gesture could change what I had understood. My 30-year marriage, my 2 children, the home we had built, everything was suddenly being questioned. "What do you mean, Mom? Please be clear." My mother started crying, continuing to speak through her tears. "Wilhelm and Ingrid, they were together before you were born. They were even engaged. But then I came between them. I separated them. After I brought you into the world, Ingrid left town. But years later, when you married her, I couldn't say anything, because I saw you were happy." The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. I could only hear my own breathing. As my co-workers at the bank walked toward the meeting room, I was facing the biggest shock of my life, in my own office. "Did Ingrid know about this?" I asked, my voice a little louder than a whisper. "She didn't," my mother said. "She never did. She married you because she loved you. It has nothing to do with the past. But Heinrich, I'm getting old now. I'm tormented by my conscience. I can't carry this secret any longer." I returned to my desk and slumped into my chair. My wife's photo sat on the corner of my desk, a picture of her smiling, holding hands. Ingrid's blue eyes looked at me from the photo, a witness to our happiness. But now I could see a different story in those eyes. The shadows of the past, secrets I didn't know, the dark corners of our family history. "Do the children know about this?" "No, of course not. Friedrich and Greta know nothing. This secret is just mine and now yours." I wanted to hang up, but she continued, "Son, please don't tell Ingrid. She's innocent in this. Only I made a mistake. I was foolish in my youth." After the phone call ended, I was left alone in my office. While the outside world continued to turn as usual, I was experiencing a collapse inside. Was my marriage a lie? Was my wife my father's former lover? Were my children part of this complicated family web? Throughout the day I attended meetings, talked to clients, signed reports. But my mind kept returning to my mother's words. Driving home that evening, stuck in Berlin traffic, I imagined my wife's face. Ingrid, 50 years old, still beautiful. Translated with deepl.com, free version. The mother of our children, my life partner. But now I would see her with completely different eyes. When I got home, Ingrid was preparing dinner in the kitchen. She was cooking the traditional German Sauerbraten, and that familiar smell had spread throughout the house. Friedrich had come home from university and was doing his homework. Greta, 17, was listening to music in her room. A normal family evening, a normal life. But nothing was normal anymore. "How was your day, Heinrich?" Ingrid asked, approaching me and kissing me on the cheek. At that moment I thought her lips might have touched my father's lips, and my stomach churned. "It was fine," I replied, my voice thick in my throat. "How are you?" Ingrid examined me with a concerned expression. "You don't look well. Did something happen? Could I tell her the truth? Could I close this box my mother had opened? Did I have the right to question my wife's past? No, I'm just tired, I said, and left the kitchen. At dinner, while Friedrich told me about his projects at university and Greta complained about her boyfriend, I just watched Ingrid. I searched for my father in her facial expressions. In her smile, her way of speaking, her hand movements, I looked for traces of my father. And I realized with fear that there really were some similarities. As we lay down at night, Ingrid hugged me. Heinrich, are you sure you're okay? You're very quiet today. I felt her warmth, the intimacy of our 30-year relationship, but at the same time, I thought about this woman's past with another man, with my father. Ingrid, I said in the dark, we've never talked about your past. What was your life like before you got married? I felt her body tense. Why are you asking me this now? I was just curious. We've been married for 30 years, but I don't know much about your past. Ingrid sat up and turned on the lamp at the head of the bed. There was a strange look on her face, a nervousness mixed with fear. The past continued. Son, please don't tell Ingrid. She's innocent in this. It's just me. I made a mistake. I was foolish in my youth. After the phone call ended, I was left alone in my office. While the outside world continued to turn as usual, I was experiencing a collapse inside. Was my marriage a lie? Was my wife my father's former lover? Were my children part of this complicated family web? Throughout the day I attended meetings, spoke with clients, signed reports, but my mind kept returning to my mother's words. Driving home that evening, stuck in Berlin traffic, I imagined my wife's face. Ingrid, 50 years old, still beautiful, our children's, my mother, my life partner. But now I would see her with completely different eyes. When I got home, Ingrid was preparing dinner in the kitchen. She was cooking the traditional German Sauerbraten, and that familiar smell had spread throughout the house. Friedrich had come home from university and was doing his homework. Greta, 17, was listening to music in her room. A normal family evening, a normal life. But nothing was normal anymore. How was your day, Heinrich? Ingrid asked, approaching me and kissing me on the cheek. At that moment I thought her lips might have touched my father's lips, and my stomach churned. It was fine, I replied, my voice thick in my throat. How are you? Ingrid examined me with a concerned expression. You don't look well. Did something happen? Could I tell her the truth? Could I close this box my mother had opened? Did I have the right to question my wife's past? No, I'm just tired, I said, and left the kitchen. At dinner, while Friedrich told me about his projects at university and Greta gushed about her boyfriend, I just watched Ingrid. I searched her expressions for traces of my father, in her smile, her way of speaking, her hand movements, and I realized with fear that there really were some similarities. When we went to bed that night, Ingrid hugged me. Heinrich, are you sure you're okay? You're very quiet today. I felt her warmth, the intimacy of our 30 years together. But at the same time, I thought about this woman's past with another man, with my father. Ingrid, I said in the dark, we've never talked about your past. What was your life like before we got married? I felt her body tense. Why are you asking this now? I'm just curious. We've been married for 30 years, but I don't know much about your past. Ingrid sat up and turned on the lamp at the head of the bed. She had a strange look on her face, a nervousness mixed with fear. The past should stay in the past, Heinrich. Why are you digging into these things? I'm just curious. Was there someone you were in love with before? Ingrid was silent for a long time. Then she took a deep breath. Yes, there was. But it was a long time ago, even before you were born. That man doesn't matter anymore. Who was that man? Ingrid scrutinized me, suspicion in her eyes. Heinrich, where is this conversation going? Why have you suddenly become interested in my past? I just want to know. Are there things about me that you don't know? My wife got out of bed, straightened her nightgown, and walked to the other side of the room. Wilhelm, she said finally, her voice almost a whisper. His name was Wilhelm. But Heinrich, that was a very long time ago. Everything ended before I married you. My heart seemed to stop. When I heard my father's name, I felt as if I stood still while the world turned. Who was Wilhelm? I asked, even though I knew. He was a banker, a very handsome, very intelligent man. We were even engaged. But then, his family got involved. His mother didn't want me, she wouldn't let him marry me, so I left town and built a new life for myself, until I met you. When she finished speaking, the room fell into a deep silence. I sat on the bed listening to my wife talk about her past with Wilhelm, my father. What was Wilhelm's last name? I asked, wanting to know everything now. Müller, said Ingrid. Wilhelm Müller. But Heinrich, please, let's drop this subject. There's no point in digging up the past Wilhelm Müller. My father. My wife was my father's former fiancée, and I was my father's son. What kind of twist of fate was this? How could I have encountered such a coincidence? Or was it really a coincidence? Ingrid came back to bed and sat down next to me. Heinrich, will you feel differently about me after this conversation? The past is in the past. Today you are the only one in my life. Seeing her, touching her, now disturbed me. She was the woman my father loved, my father's fiancée, my father's, and now mine. No, I lied. Nothing changes. But everything had changed. Completely. Ingrid turned off the light and lay down next to me again. As I stared at the ceiling, I tried to live with this new reality in my mind. While my wife breathed peacefully, I was lost in the shadows of the past. The next morning, I spoke to my mother again. Mom, Ingrid remembers my father's name. She said Wilhelm Müller. How is that possible? Because, son, fate sometimes plays cruel games. You didn't meet Ingrid by chance. When she heard your last name, she couldn't connect it to the past because Wilhelm was very young then, and you were very small. But I knew everything and chose to remain silent. This is terrible, Mom. I'm in the middle of a disaster. I know, son. That's why I can't carry this secret anymore. But please, think of your children. They are innocent in this. After hanging up the phone, I sat alone in my office and thought. What would I say to Friedrich and Greta? Could I tell Ingrid the truth? How would this family secret affect everyone if it came out? I tried to make up my mind all day, but my thoughts remained unclear. When I returned home that evening, everything seemed normal, but nothing was the same anymore. Part 2. The Fall of the Mask. On the morning of the third day, Friedrich's voice woke me up. He was knocking loudly on my door, shouting, "Dad, it's urgent." I looked at the clock. It was only 7 o'clock. When I opened the door in my nightgown, I saw the panic on my son's face. Friedrich was 21, a senior in college, usually a calm and rational boy. But the fear I saw in his eyes that morning startled me. "What happened, son?" I asked, hugging him. "Dad, Grandma Bertha was taken to the hospital. Mom called very early. You were asleep. She seems to have had a heart attack." My world collapsed at that moment. My mother, the mother who had revealed this terrible secret to me, was now fighting for her life in the hospital. I quickly got dressed, and Ingrid and I rushed to the hospital. On the way, I held my wife's hand, but this time for a different reason. I now knew her past, but my mother's condition was more important than anything else. While waiting outside the intensive care unit at the hospital, the doctor came, a middle-aged man with a serious face. "Mr. Müller, your mother's condition is critical. She had a massive heart attack. She's stable now, but it's best to be prepared." The words stuck in my throat. Was my mother dying? And if she did, would this secret be buried with her? Ingrid was leaning on my shoulder, crying. Heinrich, Bertha is a very strong woman. She'll pull through, she said, trying to comfort me. But I heard something different in her voice. Was it concern or relief? My mother called for me during the brief time she was conscious. When I entered the intensive care unit, seeing her like that broke my heart. She was weak, pale, lying there hooked up to tubes. Heinrich, she whispered, come closer. I have more to tell you. I leaned close to her ear. My son, Ingrid, wasn't just my father's old lover. They had a child. My blood ran cold. What are you saying, Mom? Wilhelm and Ingrid had a son. They gave him up for adoption right after he was born. That child must be Friedrich's age now, maybe even older. I couldn't speak, my mother continued. His name was Klaus Becker. He took the surname of the adoptive family. But Heinrich, that's not all. There's worse. How could it get worse? Mom, please. After Ingrid got pregnant, Wilhelm was also with another woman. The woman had also become pregnant. They both gave birth around the same time. The world spun around me. Who was the other woman, Mom? Her name was Helga Schneider. Her child was also a boy. But Helga kept her child. That child's name was Dieter Schneider. The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. My mother closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Heinrich, your father had 3 sons with 3 different women. You, Klaus, and Dieter. You are all brothers. A deep silence fell over the hospital room. Only the sound of the machines could be heard. I suddenly found myself part of a trio of brothers. I had 2 unknown brothers. Where are Klaus and Dieter now? I don't know, son. But if you look for them, you can find them. And Heinrich? Ingrid didn't know any of this. After she gave birth to Klaus, she tried to give him up and forget him. When she married you, she made a fresh start, erasing the past. My mother looked exhausted. The nurse came in and told me I had to leave. I squeezed my mother's hand. Mom, you're going to get better. We'll talk about these secrets more. If anything happens, my mother whispered one last time, read my father's old diaries. Then you'll understand how much you resemble him. When I left the hospital, my head was spinning. I found Ingrid and my children waiting in the car. Friedrich looked at me with worried eyes. How is Dad? Is Grandma okay? Stable, I said simply. On the way home, I didn't speak the entire journey. I didn't know how to look at Ingrid anymore. She wasn't just my wife, she was also the mother of my unknown brother. She had a son named Klaus, and she didn't know it. Or did she know and keep it a secret? When we got home, I went straight to the attic where my father's old belongings were kept. My mother had mentioned my father's diaries. I hadn't touched those boxes in years. I started searching through old papers, photos, and notebooks. Finally, I found an old leather-bound diary. When I opened it, I saw pages written in my father's handwriting. The date was 1978. I wasn't even born yet. Ingrid is pregnant. She says this child is mine, but I'm not sure, because I was also with Helga at the same time. Both of them are pregnant. I don't know what to do. They're pressuring me to marry Bertha. But I can't give up either of these women. I turned the page and continued reading. Ingrid gave birth to a boy. She named him Klaus, but I can't take responsibility for him. I'm going to marry Bertha and start a new life. They'll adopt Klaus. Maybe it will be better this way. A few pages later, Helga also gave birth to a boy. She named him Dieter. She will keep this child with her. I will also pay her a salary, but no one will know about this situation. And the last page, Bertha got pregnant. This time it's definitely mine because I'm only with her now. Heinrich will be born. He will be my legitimate son. I need to forget the others and focus on him. I closed the diary and held it in my hand for a long time. My father had fathered 3 sons with 3 different women, but he had only accepted me. He had rejected Klaus and Dieter. Now I had ended up in this mess in my own life. I went downstairs. Ingrid was watching TV in the living room. Friedrich was studying in his room. Greta was talking on the phone with her friends. A normal family evening, but nothing was normal anymore. "Ingrid," I said, sitting down next to her, "we need to talk." She turned her head towards me. There was concern in her eyes. "About what, Heinrich? About your mother?" "No, about us. When you were with Wilhelm, did you ever get pregnant?" Her face went pale. She turned the TV down low and turned to me. "Heinrich, what do you mean? Why are you asking these questions? Please answer me. Did you get pregnant?" There was a long silence. Finally, she nodded. "Yes, once. But that child, I had him adopted. I never told anyone. It's in the past. Was the child's name Klaus?" Ingrid jumped up, shock written all over her face. "Where did you get that information? No one knew about this. No one." "My mother knew. She told me. And Ingrid, Wilhelm is my father." My wife froze as if struck by lightning. She stared at me, her mouth open, her eyes wide, her breath caught. That's impossible." "Heinrich, you're joking, right?" "I wish it were a joke. But it's true. You were my father's former lover. Klaus is my father's son, so he's my brother. And you're both my father's and my—" Ingrid began to cry, sobbing. "Heinrich, I didn't know. I never knew you were my father. If I had known, I would never have married you. Never." I hugged her, but this time it wasn't comforting, it was helpless. We were both victims of this situation. "Where is Klaus now?" I asked. "I don't know," she sobbed. He answered. "After I gave it to him, I never saw him again. I don't know his address. I don't know what he's doing. I only know the name Klaus Becker and Dieter." "Do you know anyone named Dieter Schneider?" "No, I've never heard that name." "Who is he?" "My father's son from another woman, my 3rd brother." Ingrid shook her head, trying not to believe it. "How is this possible, Heinrich? How did we end up in such a mess? None of us slept that night. Ingrid stayed in the guest room, and I slept alone in the master bedroom. I stared at the ceiling until morning, thinking about how our lives had become so complicated. Early the next morning, I decided to hire a private detective. I needed to find Klaus Becker and Dieter Schneider. I had to see how these secrets would affect my family. The detective called 2 days later. "Mr. Müller, I found Klaus Becker. He lives in Frankfurt and works as an architect. He's married with 2 children. And Dieter Schneider lives in Berlin, your city. He's also a banker like you. In fact, you work in the same industry." The same industry. Had we ever met without realizing it? "Can I have their addresses?" "Of course, but Mr. Müller, be careful before contacting them. Family secrets like this can turn people's lives upside down." I got my 2 brothers' addresses. Klaus lived in Frankfurt, Dieter on the other side of Berlin. Should I meet them? Should I tell them the truth? What would I say to Friedrich and Greta? How would learning these secrets affect them? Part 3. The Brothers' Reunion. It took me a week to make up my mind. During that time, things between Ingrid and me were like ice. We lived in the same house but acted like strangers. She was ashamed and afraid of her past coming out. I was trying to come to terms with the fact that my wife was also my father's former lover. I knew Friedrich and Greta had noticed the tension in the house, but I hadn't told them anything yet. My mother was showing signs of improvement in the hospital, but the doctors said she would need long-term care. Every day when I visited, my mother told me more details. "Heinrich," she said on my last visit, "my father wasn't just a man. He was very complicated. He had relationships with 3 different women at the same time, but he never really loved any of them. They were all just needs to him." Hearing this hurt, but I needed to know the truth. Did he ever mention Klaus and Dieter? Never. He completely rejected those 2 children. But Heinrich, you were his pride and joy, his legal heir. He loved you very much. On Monday morning, I finally made my decision. I would contact Dieter first because he was in Berlin. According to the information I got from the detective, he was a department manager at Deutsche Bank. Ironically, we worked in the same industry and had probably crossed paths before. I called Dieter's office. May I speak to Dieter Schneider? You are speaking to him. Who is this? His voice was deep and confident, just like mine. This is Heinrich Müller. I need to talk to you about something important. Can we meet in person? About what, Mr. Müller? A family matter. Do you know Wilhelm Müller? There was a long silence on the phone. Then Dieter's voice changed, becoming harsher. Where do you know Wilhelm Müller from? He's my father. And I think he's yours too. Silence again. This time it lasted longer. I don't understand what you're saying. Can we meet tonight? This isn't something to discuss on the phone, Dieter agreed very late. We met at 7 in the evening at an old cafe in the city center. It wasn't hard to recognize him because he looked so much like me. Same gray hair, same eye color, same facial features. It felt like I was seeing my father when he was young. Heinrich Müller, I introduced myself, walking towards him. Dieter Schneider, he said, shaking my hand. Now, can you explain this Wilhelm Müller business? We sat down and ordered our coffees. Then I told him everything. What I had read in my father's diary, what my mother had told me at the hospital, the situation with Ingrid. Dieter listened, his face expressionless. When I finished, he didn't say anything for a long time. Why should I believe this story? He finally asked. Do we have any proof? I took my father's diary out of my bag and opened it. Here, in his own handwriting. Your mother is Helga Schneider, and you are Dieter. Born in 1978. I don't know. I don't know yet. That night I sat down with Friedrich and Greta. I decided to tell them everything. There would be no more secrets. Kids, I said, I need to talk to you about something very important. It's about our mother's past and our family. Friedrich waited patiently for me to begin. Greta put down her phone and began to listen intently. Your mother had a child with someone else before she married. That child is now an architect named Klaus, living in Frankfurt. Greta's mouth fell open. So we have a stepbrother? Yes, but not just him. I also have two brothers, Klaus and Dieter. The three of us were born to the same father but different mothers. Friedrich stood up. How is that possible, Dad? Did our grandfather have children with other women? Yes, son. And the most surprising part is that your mother was our grandfather's former lover. None of us knew about us. It was clear that my children were in shock. Greta started crying. Does that mean our family was a lie? No, my daughter. Our family is real, but our past is much more complicated than we thought. Friedrich was deep in thought. So will we get to meet Klaus and Dieter? If you want to, yes, they are your uncles too. At midnight, the four of us sat in the living room. There were many things our family had to decide. Did we want to make Klaus and Dieter part of our lives? How would Ingrid face her past? How would I treat her as my wife and as my former lover? And most importantly, when my mother was discharged from the hospital, how would we sort out all this confusion? Chapter 4. The Depths of Destruction. The first week after my mother was discharged from the hospital, our house was like a war zone. Bertha sat in the living room armchair, seemingly enjoying telling this family secret to everyone who came. It was as if she was happy that the burden she had carried for years was finally over, but she ignored the damage it caused us. Heinrich, she said on the third day, we must invite Klaus home. He is part of this family now. When Ingrid heard these words, she came out of the kitchen and stood in front of my mother. Mrs. Bertha, Klaus is my son, but he has built his own life now. There's no need to involve us. You will be quiet, my mother said sternly. You came to this house because you loved Wilhelm. Now you will bear the consequences. I will never forget the look on Ingrid's face at that moment. There was anger, shame, helplessness, and a deep, hidden regret. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't cry. She just quietly went to her room. When Friedrich witnessed this argument, he turned to me. "Dad, why are you letting Mom do this?" "Grandma is being unfair." I knew my son was right, but I was also confused about which side to take. My mother seemed to be taking revenge for the secret she had kept for years. Ingrid was paying the price for her past. I was caught in the middle between two fires. A week later, Klaus came to Berlin. When I picked him up at the airport, I could tell he was tense. We drove in silence for half the way. Then he spoke. "Heinrich, I'm not ready for this. I have my own family, my own life. I don't want to get involved in this mess." "I understand, Klaus. But now we know the truth. Can we ignore it?" "Maybe we can't ignore it, but we don't have to turn our lives upside down." When we arrived home, Ingrid was waiting at the door. When she saw Klaus, her maternal instincts kicked in. She clearly wanted to hug him, but Klaus kept his distance. "Hello, Ingrid," he said coldly. "I'm glad to see you again after all these years." "Klaus, my son." "No," Klaus said, raising his hand. "I'm not your son. You gave birth to me, but my mother is Anna's mother, Margaret. Never forget that." Ingrid's face flushed, her eyes filled with tears. But she knew she had to accept the truth of Klaus's words. We went inside, and my mother stood up when she saw Klaus. "So you're Klaus. You look a lot like Wilhelm." Klaus shook hands with my mother, but was not warm. I never knew Wilhelm. He was just a sperm donor to me. These words shook my mother and me. Klaus made it clear how angry he was. Greta and Friedrich also met Klaus. Greta was more curious, while Friedrich was cautious. They asked Klaus how his children had been affected by the situation. "I told Anna everything," Klaus said. "She was shocked, of course. But our marriage is strong. We can handle this secret. The real question is what we do from here." That evening, translated with deepl.com, free version, Klaus thought, "That makes sense. But I have conditions." "What are they?" I asked curiously. "Ingrid shouldn't call me Mom. She's my birth mother, that's all. My mother is Margaret. Second, Heinrich, don't act like there's no problem between your wife and me. This situation is strange, let's admit it. Third, don't force me to attend your family gatherings." I accepted these conditions. Dieter agreed too. That evening, the three of us went out to dinner in the city. We left our families behind and talked just the three of us. "So how will the kids take this?" Klaus asked. "Friedrich and Greta are mature about it," I said. "What do your kids say?" "They're surprised, but curious about you. Anna wants to meet you too." "Then let's have a family picnic," Dieter said enthusiastically. "Everyone comes, we meet." Klaus hesitated. "Isn't it too soon? We're still trying to get used to this situation." "Whatever you want, Klaus," I said. "We won't rush." When I got home that night, Ingrid was waiting, crying. "Heinrich, Klaus hates me." "He doesn't hate you. He's just angry. He'll get used to it over time." "What about you? Do you hate me?" I looked at her for a long time. "Ingrid, I don't hate you, but everything has changed. You're not just my wife anymore. You're also my father's former lover. It's strange." "I know. I feel the same way. Sometimes when I look at you, I see Wilhelm." This confession shook me. "What do you mean?" "You're so much like your father, Heinrich. The way you talk, the way you laugh, even the way you get angry is the same. It bothers me." We slept separately that night. I stayed in the master bedroom, she stayed in the guest room. Our marriage had entered a new dimension. Over the following weeks, the relationship between Klaus and me slowly began to improve. We spoke on the phone once a week. Dieter came home almost every day. Friedrich and Greta had grown very attached to him. "Heinrich," Dieter said one evening, I'd like to meet Klaus's children. They're like my nieces and nephews. I like the idea." I called Klaus and explained the situation. "My children are curious about you," Klaus said. "Anna too. Maybe we can really get together." 2 weeks later, we met Klaus's family in Frankfurt. Anna, Klaus's wife, was shy at first but warmed up over time. "This situation is very strange," she said to me. "But if Klaus is happy, I support him." Klaus's children, 16-year-old Lisa and 14-year-old Max, immediately bonded with Friedrich and Greta. "Are we cousins?" Lisa asked. "In a way," I replied with a smile. That day, for the first time, I felt like part of a real family. The 3 siblings, our spouses, and our children were having a normal picnic. Even Klaus had started to laugh. That evening, Klaus spoke to me privately. "Heinrich, maybe it won't be so bad. Anna welcomed you very warmly. How do you feel?" I asked. "Strange, but not bad. For the first time, I feel like I have 2 brothers. Dieter is a really good guy. And you're a much better person than my father." Hearing those words warmed my heart. "Klaus, we can't change the past, but we can shape the future together." When I got home, things with Ingrid were still uncertain. We were sleeping separately, just trying to act normal around the kids. One evening, we ran into each other in the kitchen. "Heinrich," she said quietly, "this can't go on." "I know," I said. "What are we going to do?" Maybe we need a break. I could move in with my sister. The kids can stay with you." This suggestion surprised me. "Are you sure?" "Both you and I are trying to cope with this situation. Maybe some distance will do us good." I thought Ingrid was right. 2 days later, she moved into her sister's house with a few suitcases. Friedrich and Greta were sad, but they accepted the situation. "Is it temporary, Dad?" Greta asked. "I don't know, sweetheart. Time will tell."